right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Watering Hole. I always enjoy these follow-up calls with Tracker John because, I don't know, it's just like excitement. Your daily job in the fall just seems exciting and cool, and you never know what phone calls you're going to get. But before we dive into that and get into that, Justin?
Yes, Todd.
What do we have? A fine announcement.
Is it an announcement? I don't know that it's an announcement, but as always, guys.
You're pregnant?
Today, I look pregnant. I am not pregnant. Today's episode is being brought to you guys by the fine folks at the Hunting Lease Network. So if you guys are in the mood for a new hunting lease and you want to sneak in on Todd's property, you can go ahead and jump over. Although I think that lease ended last week, so maybe another one will come up. We found out after the fact on last week's lease announcement that the lease that Ben featured for us was literally a stone's throw, a literal stone's throw from where Todd killed a very big buck this year.
Thanks, Ben.
So I would predict 100% probability the deer you killed was on that piece of property at some point in time.
I'm going to predict the opposite. I'm going to say it would never went over there.
He definitely would have gone over there. So if you guys are looking for a lease, you're looking for a new hunting spot, make sure you check out Hunting Lease Network. Lots of great stuff popping up. And this is the time of year you want to get a lease because you can get out, you can scout while there's no leaves, there's no bugs. It was nice this weekend. It was warm. It would have been a great time to get out and do some scouting, although it was a little too muddy for my tastes. It was pretty slick and nasty. I like a little bit of a firmer ground for my scouting efforts. But yes, Hunting Lease Network, make sure you guys check it out. So this week, as Todd mentioned, we have got the infamous Tracker John on the line. Once again, you know, Tracker John, it's always a good year when Todd and I don't have to see you. So, for tracking purposes anyways. Although Todd did have to see you, but it wasn't your deer. So you got lucky this year.
Well, correct. I saw Todd tangentially.
Tangentially. That's a great term.
And we're going to, of course, touch on that at some point. But before we dive into that specifically, I mean, John, I think the reason why I always enjoy having you on each year is because of the knowledge that you gain from going on as many tracks as you go on. You know what? For most hunters, right? How many tracks do you get to go on a year? You know, maybe you're lucky and you can go on one or two. Maybe you get a phone call from a buddy. So what's the average track that each guy that hunts regularly gets to go on? Maybe 2 or 3, if I had to guess. Maybe.
Yeah.
You know, and when you talk to someone like you, it's what you do all fall long.
Sometimes multiple in a day. How many tracks do you keep track of how many you do?
I don't anymore. I used to keep careful records, but I'm beyond that. But I can tell you that 2 or 3 tracks, there's days I'll do that many or even more.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might go 2 or 3 in a season.
Yeah.
And that's a good year.
Right.
That means people are shooting deer.
I agree. But the point is, I think it's the knowledge that you gain and that you learn from all these tracks is why I want to have you on, is because I think it's just that what you learn each year is different, you know? So what I'd like to do is kind of just...
Well, I see so much.
Right. And so what I want to do is I'd like to start off, you know, talking about some of your tracks, and not the basic ones, but the ones that are going to help our audience in situations to where they're going to be more successful. And they're always different. And where I'm ultimately leading with this is kind of Kurt's hunt. And for those of you who watched Kurt's episode, you know, there was a lot of comments, and there were some comments where people were just, why did you call a tracking dog in? The deer was right there. And we'll get there. But before we get there, let's hear about some of the tracks and some of the stuff you saw this year.
Well, first I'll say that it was a good season, and there's different ways to measure, at least in my opinion, measure what's a good season. Now, yes, you want to hear about the big deer we found. We found a lot of big deer. The biggest was a 216-inch, just a beautiful, incredible deer. But I also measured, and I didn't get too beat up. I didn't get too stressed out. All the dogs stayed healthy. Nobody got hurt. Nobody got sick. And that's huge. That's a good season right there. But on top of that, all the trails we did and a lot of big deer, found deer for a lot of kids and some women. So overall, it was just a great season.
So speaking about the track specifically, I think that's the real knowledge. That's the real 100-pound gorilla in the room. Every track is different.
What kind of a small gorilla? 100-pounder. He's a juvenile.
That's a good point. Sorry, leave it to Justin to bust my chops. I love it. The 10,000-pound gorilla in the room.
He's the big one.
Thank you, Justin. What I want to do is dissect some of the tracks. Some of those ones where you're reflecting back on them today, you're driving home from Illinois, you're heading back to New York, and you're just thinking about, man, if you're going to get somebody on the phone, you're going to talk about these different tracks. Those are the ones I think that interest people the most, right? Not the ones where it's 200 yards and it was your typical gut shot, your typical liver shot, whatever. It's those shots and those ones where you're like, wow, how does this happen?
Well, I deal with the atypical.
What was your most atypical for this year, let's say?
Well, I had some very interesting trails this year, but do you want to springboard off of Kurt's? Because off of those comments about why did you call the dog in on something that turned out to be so obvious? Yeah. After we address that, I can springboard into some trails that I did this year.
Cool.
That proved why you do what you did with Kurt's.
Okay, well, let's start right there. Kurt and I are on this winter hunt. Beautiful conditions. I mean, the snow is out. The deer are on those feeding patterns. And this was a buck that, Kurt knew about for a couple of years. A lot of effort went into being able to harvest this deer. And here it is. Maybe it was my third or fourth time in with Kurt. And sure enough, we see in the woods, boom, here he comes, man. And he comes out, works his way out. Everything's going perfect for me and Kurt in that blind. Kurt goes to full draw. I'm on the camera, and bam, that arrow. I mean, quite frankly, listen, I would have bet I don't bet a lot, but I probably would have bet my home on that one that was a gut shot deer. We're going to need your help. And you know what? I looked at Kurt, and I was basically, and we watched the footage. We kept looking at back and forth. And we're like, you know what? There is zero reason not to call you, communicate with you, get you the video. And we decided based upon the information that we had at the time that was going to be the safest bet to be able to recover that deer. Fast forward, you come in, we get up the next morning, you're getting all your gear ready, you're getting the dogs ready, everything's looking good, we're all together. We go around the corner, bam, your dog jumps on the trail right away. And it may have been, I don't know, 4 minutes, maybe. I don't even know if it was 4 minutes. Me and Kurt were still messing around, looking at the blind and where the shot was. And next thing we know, it was like, there he is. It was like, are you kidding me? But
well, I can usually tell right off the bat. And when the dog, she wasn't even to where the track was, and she's reading dead deer. I can just tell by the way she's reacting and how fast she's going and her mannerisms. So I had a pretty good clue right off the bat that, this is dead deer walking. We're gonna get this one. And sure enough, that's the way it turned out.
What do you think the dog's picking up on in those situations where she's like, okay, we got this one? What is it they're smelling?
Okay, well, there's the possibility of several different things. Blood scent, obviously, and not so obviously, it does not have to drip to the ground. It can just be that aroma that drifts off the deer or out of its mouth, out of the hole, just molecules of blood scent. And in the case of a gut shot, then there's, the intestinal or gut matter, the scent of that, hopefully. So do you think the dog is, so if you were to, kind of compare and contrast, let's say a gut shot deer versus if you put your dog on a track of a deer that was a double lung shot, right? Obviously, it's going to smell totally different to them. You think they have an understanding of when I smell that lung blood or that liver blood or that specific scent, we're going to get this one versus the gut shot where we think a lot of times I just wonder how much
the reasoning in our own minds as humans, we try to put on to like the way the dog's reacting or what they're thinking.
Well, here's what I didn't get to yet when I said there's several things that the dog is keying on. The other very important thing that I'm sure they're keying on, I mean, the dog doesn't talk to me, so I don't know for sure, but
Sure.
I'd be pretty confident of this. So whether it's a lung shot, a heart shot, a gut shot, the more seriously wounded the animal, the greater this wounding scent, stress hormones, whatever. So in the absence of the blood scent, there's that scent, I call it dead deer walking. I mean, it's just emanating off the deer, and the dog picks up on that. So you could have a trail that doesn't have any blood on it, and if that deer is seriously wounded, close to death, it's leaving that scent that the dog can pick up on.
Right. And just through hundreds or thousands of these tracks, you've been able to kind of identify how your dog is reacting and ultimately being able to predict what you think the outcome is going to be. Like, this dog is reacting in a way that I've seen 100 times before.
Yes, now
like,
it's not always that obvious. It depends on the scenting conditions, how old the track is, what's happened with the weather and wind, lots of different variables. But like in Kurt's case, when my dog sweeps up to where the shot was, and you don't have to show it where it was, it doesn't have to search around. It's just like right off the bat, it's got it and it's going. That's a great sign.
How is the tracking as far as ease when there is snow on the ground, like in that case, compared to no snow on the ground? Is it easier, harder for the dog?
It varies. Not all snow is equal, and the temperature, is it wet snow? Is it dry snow it's 10 below zero?
Sure.
Very big difference. If it's a wet snow, I've successfully trailed under many inches of snow. But if it's deep and it's super cold, that's a different matter.
Got it.
That you might struggle with.
So the kind of wet snow, a little bit more
Which
moisture.
it was with Kurt's
right.
deer. I mean, that is as ideal as you could get.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Kurt's deer, because you found it right away. What did he end up hitting in that deer when you guys field dressed it?
That's a good. There is no doubt, based upon the entry of that arrow and the exit of that arrow, it clearly got an artery somewhere. I mean, it had to have gotten either the artery that feeds that liver, is what I'm thinking. I mean, because when you watch,
but I mean, you guys field dressed
I
the deer.
forgot what he actually had. I don't know. No, I don't know that he actually went that far.
I know he hit the lung. I mean, so
well, there was a little lung, but the bottom line is where it went, there was an artery hit, because the amount of blood just spraying was amazing, which is not generally what you're going to get when you just shoot a liver. So somehow that broadhead and the angle of that deer made it all the way through.
As I recall, what was interesting with that shot, and it was gut shot, but as Todd said, it obviously caught something else that was really good to put it down so quickly.
Yes.
And that's what you always hope with a gut shot, but you don't know. When I'm dealing with a gut shot, I treat it as a gut shot. You hope that some arteries or major veins got hit, or some liver or a kidney. Who knows what that really is going to do the job. But you don't know about those things. That's why, it's Kurt's biggest buck of a lifetime. You don't want to play around. You're going to stack all the odds in your favors. That's why I got called. But because you don't know how that gut shot is truly going to turn out. You're hoping that something else good got hit. You're hoping that the deer read the script and did what they're supposed to do, go 150 yards, bed down, and that's where they're going to die. But I'm here to tell you with plenty of experience that is not always the case. Sometimes it's far from the case. I can give you some examples of what happened this year on some gut shots that were total opposite of Kurt's. But, I have clients typically, I'm not getting fed. I call Kurt's deer, that's a throw the dog a bone trail. I mean, we weren't needed. We got called in. Insurance that wasn't needed. There it is. The dog's happy. Everybody's happy. Throw the dog a bone. Well, it doesn't always happen like that. And because it doesn't always happen like that, I've got a few clients, longtime clients, real big buck hunters, that sometimes will say to me, we're after this big deer. If it doesn't drop in sight, we're calling you. We're not taking chances, and we're going to see what happens. Well, that's what happened with Kurtz. We got called in, but fortunately that was a hit that was great. And the unusual thing with Kurt's hit is the exit was actually higher in the body than the entry. How that happened, I don't know, but that's definitely helped his cause. Sure. If it had gone out lower, might have been a very different story, but somehow that arrow kind of turned up a little bit and the exit was actually higher than the entry. So that was definitely a plus for his cause.
I think the thing, with something like Kurtz too is, and we talk about this a lot, I mean, we have the benefit of going back and looking and slowing down footage and watching the deer's reaction afterward and looking for that, blood coming out. We have every tool available to us to be able to make the right decision. Most people don't.
No.
Right? And even with all of those tools, there's always still a question, right? Like with this deer, we didn't know that the exit was higher. We didn't know that he clipped an offside long in a liver. Like, to me, I always call it, like, no pun intended, but like my gut reaction. When somebody sends me a clip of a deer getting shot, the first time I see it, whatever my reaction is, the first time I see it, before I slow it down and judge it and everything else, what's my first reaction? If my first reaction is to go, oh, shoot, then we probably have a problem on our hands.
Agree.
And that was my reaction when I saw Kurt's shot. Turned out to be way better than we thought it was going to be. But even with the ability for us to slow it down and look at all those things, we still wouldn't have predicted that type of recovery in that shot to have done the damage that it did. So I think it's easy for people to watch the video, and hindsight is always 20/20, and say, why did you call the dog? You didn't need it. You should have just went and looked first. You would have found it without the dog, and you could have spared yourself all of that. But again, we didn't know that going into it.
No, but it's funny when you read the comments, Justin, where it's like, gosh, it sucks to see a big buck like that succumb to that kind of a shot. It's like, guys, does anyone really think we're aiming for those spots? I mean, it's like, I would love to follow around the keyboard warriors. I agree.
People just love to be angry.
But I think what's cool, John, is I want to take this conversation that we got going and then go into that text that you sent me that was longer than my arm after this, harvest of Kurt's deer. It was like a day or two later that I feel like I got a text from you. It may have been a week later. Don't quote me on all this stuff, but where you had a very similar shot, but a very different outcome.
It was a few days later, and actually it was when the season had turned to gun season. So there were actually two deer hit at a outfitter that I do some work for, same farm. And one was a shoulder type hit, the low shoulder leg hit, and the other was a gut shot with I think it was a 400 Legend, one of those straight wall big guns. And the gut shot, they said there was blood sprayed everywhere, blood and stomach matters and just all over the snow. And I didn't start at the beginning, so I didn't see that. I did see a photo of it, and they were right. There was a lot sprayed all over. So they had that one, and then the leg shot or the low shot. And so they went and they thought they were going to scoop based on the blood and the stomach matter that it was all over the snow. They thought that one was going to be the typical, 150 yards in, and there he is. Well, they went in 100 yards and the blood was tapering off and no dead deer. So wisely they backed out. The other one, they trailed it a little bit and then weren't having success, so they backed out. I got called in that night. So they asked, well, which one do you want to start with? And I said, well, the gut shot just today, again, to my rule, it seems like that one should be down, but I don't know. It's a gut shot, and I treat gut shots strictly as a gut shot because I don't know what else got hit. So I thought, no, we're not going in on that one. Let's do the low hit. And so we did it, and we went quite a ways, and on and off again, blood, and finally we jumped the deer. I said, well, we got to back out, come back in tomorrow. And they said, well, what about the gut shot? Let's go do it. And I said, well, I guess we could, but I think we ought to wait for that one too. We've got two deer here on the same farm. It's a gut shot. In my opinion, the smart thing would be to wait till the morning. I actually gave them odds. I said, okay, 80% in my mind is saying, yeah, the gut shot is probably piled up not too far away based on what you saw. I said, but there's 20% of me that's saying, bad move to go in tonight. You should wait till the morning. So they followed my recommendation. We went in the next day, and they said, well, which are we going to start on? I said, well, let's do the leg hit because, again, doesn't hurt to give the gut shot some more time. So we did the leg hit. We follow, and the blood was, again, intermittent. We go down out of this hardwoods down into a draw, and we went down at the bottom. I didn't notice it, but they said they saw some other blood, and it kind of looked like deer had maybe milled around a little bit. But then my dog started out of that draw again. We go up this hill, and my friend that was behind me is going, I got blood over here. And I said, well, there's a speck here. The dog's on. And she didn't hesitate. She just kept on going. And so I'm following the deer, I said, or the dog. And I said, well, it's going this way. We're going to stay with it. And I'd gotten a little bit farther, and I looked up all the way to the top of the hill at the edge of this woodlot, and I could see a deer, and he's looking rough. I mean, he can't barely move. And so I stop, and I'm trying to analyze that. In fact, it's our deer and what his condition is. And then I hear about 50 yards off from where my friend had spotted the deer, the hunters and another guy that had fallen behind a little bit. All of a sudden, they're calling. They said, we got the deer over here. And I said, and they said, well, yeah, we got him here. Your dog is switched off to a different deer. So, well, I guess that's possible. So we watched that other deer a little bit, and he leaves the hardwoods and goes up and over the rise of the open hill beyond it. So we go and look to see the deer that they've got, and it's still alive. They had to dispatch it, and that turned out to be the gut shot. So there's the gut shot the next day, still alive. It had gone hundreds and hundreds of yards. And there's this deer that supposedly was going to be, 100, 150 yards in and dead. Well, it had all kinds of stuff blown all over the snow, but yet it went to a trail that was intermittent and then went hundreds and hundreds of yards. And it was a deer that was still alive. So then we went and switched back to the other deer. So my dog had not switched deer. In both cases where we trailed or crossed the gut shot deer, she had stayed with the deer we put her on, and we ended up having to go, I don't know, another 400 or 500 yards on that one, and then we had to dispatch that one too. But there's the case where everybody's saying, hey, this deer is going to be right there. I mean, look at all the blood and everything all over the snow, and it did look pretty horrific, but didn't turn out to be the case. So, I see that a lot with these gut shots. You're hoping, again, that they read the script. They're not far in. They do what they're supposed to do. You don't push them, but it doesn't always work that way. Probably one of my favorite trails from this season was actually a gut shot, and it was by pretty high profile TV person. And then it was on video, and, going back to the advantages of the video, you can see pretty much where the deer gets hit, but sometimes I'm here to tell you those videos can lie. I don't know how, but sometimes they look a little off from what they truly are. But even if it is exactly where you see the animal hit, it always comes down to fractions of an inch. 1/4 of an inch one way or another with the way the blade's oriented could be the difference between sliding by an artery or cutting that artery, or sliding by an organ or lacing it open. So even when you know about where it was hit, you don't truly know exactly what got cut. So anyways, this TV person's deer, it was on video. You could see that it was shot low, shot too far back. So they didn't even go up to the arrow. They just knew what the hit was. They waited a bit, got down, backed out, and called me and arranged me for the next day. Again, no tracking whatsoever. Didn't even look at the arrow, left the arrow there. So we come in the next day, and that's, one of those cases where it's a huge deer or a really big deer, and people are saying, not taking any chances. We want you here. Maybe it's a throw the dog a bone trail. Maybe it's something we need you on. Well, this one turned out they really needed me, because we're going and, there's a speck of blood, but we're hardly seeing any blood. And then we go some more, maybe just a little speck of blood. Well, we got beyond, that range where you're hoping it's going to be, and we're just going. And then my dog was locked on, and we weren't really having too much difficulty, but it would just be the occasional speck, hundreds of yards apart sometimes. We ended up going out a different woodlot, crossing a highway, going to another woodlot, crossing a river. Fortunately, we were able to get permission to go on these various properties. We ended up, and after a while, I was beginning to think, well, this is one of those ones that he's in it for the long haul. Unfortunately, you do occasionally get those intestinal shots or gut shots that can last a very, very long time. When I'm talking days, even weeks. Not common, but it happens. And I was beginning to think maybe this one was that. But we ended up going 1.8 miles before we made the recovery. And that's a deer that was never tracked, never pushed. It just on its own volition went that distance.
Were there beds in between? Like, was it bedding down and getting up, or just went 2 miles?
No, I did not see any beds. Yeah. My theory is this deer was kind of a new deer to them. I'm guessing, and during the rut, my guess is he was, out of his normal territory looking for does, and then once he got hit, he was going back to where he typically spent his time, because it was a fairly linear path. It wasn't a lot of circling or doubling back or anything like that. He was going across country. But 1.8 miles, and who would have ever thought that on a deer that wasn't even tracked? So that was the case where, pretty good idea that they called me in. There's no way, not in a million years, they'd ever recover that deer if I hadn't showed up.
Cool. Does the dog really get a bone?
Yeah, it gets to.
Does it get a deer bone? Does it actually get a treat, John? I mean, are you taking care of these dogs?
Okay, so my dogs are so into it. It's what they've been trained to do since they were tiny little puppies. The treat is being able to work, being able to trail. Even not getting the deer at the end, they're still pretty happy because they got to do their job. But if there's a deer,
that's like everybody that comes in here to the office.
Just like that. So when you're on a track, and it's a track like the one you just described, right? You're going almost 2 miles. You're crossing property lines. Like this case, in this particular instance, obviously you're able to recover the deer. I think we've all been on those tracks where the deer doesn't get recovered. What is kind of the telltale moment for you during the track where you start questioning like whether or not this deer is going to be recovered?
Well, okay, going back to the fact that this was videoed, if it's a gut shot, pretty much it's a dead deer. It's just a question of when and where. So that can keep you going longer than, if you've got some other marginal hit that, quite probably is going to recover. But a gut shot, sooner or later, I do know of a few that have survived, but that's, over decades and decades of experience. You might as well say it doesn't happen. So it's a question of when it's going to die, where's it going to die. So that's going to keep you longer. going longer. But otherwise, I'm looking at a number of telltale signs. I want a bunch of different things or a handful of different signs pointing me in a direction before I say nay or yay. Yeah, we got to keep going, or it's time to pull the plug. So, what we're seeing for blood sign, the way the deer's moving, how my dog is handling the trail based on what I know the conditions to be or what I think the conditions are. That can tell me quite a lot. What the arrow looked like, what kind of blood, whether there's beds or not, how many beds. I'm trying to get the whole picture to be able to make my judgment. And it's, it is a judgment call, but if I can stack up a bunch of different things that are pointing in one direction, then I'm confident to say, yeah, time to pull the plug, or let's keep going. I think we still have a chance.
Yeah. How often do you end up having to pull the plug just because you can't get permission on a piece of property?
It has happened. There over the years, there have been cases where we could have, I'm sure we could have recovered the deer, but it went someplace we weren't able to get permission. But more commonly, I'll hear something like, well, yes, you can go track the deer, but go tonight because we're in there hunting, or we don't want you in during the daytime, or it's the last day of the season, tomorrow, you go the following day, or something like that. And that's pretty understandable. People have got so much invested in their properties and growing big deer, and nobody wants their property compromised. So we try to minimize that.
Understand.
And that's another thing that I'll use in determining whether we keep going or not. If we're on somebody else's property and it's looking a little dismal, well, maybe we're going to pull the plug a little faster in respect for that property owner that allowed us to come on, than if it was your own property and you don't care if we beat it all up to try to
find your deer.
Find the deer.
Yeah, I think we've been in those situations before where, neighboring, hunters have had to come onto our properties, that we hunt and look for deer. And my policy has generally been very similar, I think, right? Like if you're on blood and you got a trail and we think the deer's recoverable, like stay on it as long as you need to. But if it gets to the point where it's like, hey, we just want to bring 5 guys to grid search your whole place. Right. Like, it's kind of like, man, like at some point we got to draw the line, especially like if you're in there hunting, it's the rut, if it's one of those deals where, hey man, I'm in Kansas for the next week. Right. And I'm not like, okay, go grid search. But if I'm going to be there, I think, you want to be respectful to your neighbors, because you never know when you're going to be in that position asking for, permission. Yeah. So I think that kind of goes both ways within reason, right? You don't want to overstep your bounds.
And within reason, whether you're able to get permission or not is going to be somewhat dependent on what you can show that landowner for a trail that you've got.
Sure.
It's a little harder to get permission if you've got nothing and you've been a long ways on the trail with nothing. You're far more likely to get a no on that scenario than, okay, there's a blood trail streaming onto his property, or it's significant blood.
Yeah. Well, let's switch things up a little bit here, John. From some of the last episodes that we had with you, we had some questions come in. Curious on success rates of frontal shots, your opinion, and have you been on tracks of those nature?
Sure I have. I've been on virtually any kind of track you could think of. And
do you like when you hear that or not? Do you like when you hear that, hey, John, we need you because of the frontal shot?
No, I don't. I don't like it. No, there's too much that can go wrong, from poor penetration because of heavy bone, riding the rib cage and not even entering the body cavity. That happens with a certain frequency. Now, can it be a killing shot? Can it be an awesome shot? Yeah, again, it depends exactly what gets cut. Did it slide through and enter the chest cavity? And if it did, that front of the chest cavity is loaded up with a lot of good stuff. But it is possible to do those low hits or even low heart type hits and not have it be a quickly fatal shot or fatal shot at all. But overall, no, I'm not a fan of the quartering two shots. Again, do you want to talk about what's possible or probable? Is it possible to do a great shot like that? Of course, but you're also opening yourself up to a lot of things that could go wrong.
Sure. Do you feel like there's any trends that you've seen maybe recently in like an increase in volume of people taking any sort of shot, whether it's further or whether it's quartering to or away or completely facing away? Like, do you find yourself on more tracks for anything that you see kind of trending right now?
Well, from what you've described, I would have to agree with that. There is kind of a trend to be taking longer shots, funkier angles. I think in some ways, hunting TV hasn't been good in that, you're looking at true professionals that are maybe able to pull off some of these shots that maybe the average guy can't or shouldn't.
I think the secret there that shouldn't be a secret is that I don't care if you got a TV show or not. You're just a dude like everybody else, and a lot of them don't shoot any better than we do, than the average guy does. But there's some of them do. Some of the pros, can and are capable, but I think the lion's share of them are just average archers the same way we and a lot of people are. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I agree with everything you said, John. I feel like the tendency to push shots further and further just keeps growing by the year. And Todd and I have bitched and moaned and complained about this a lot. We're losing sight of what it means to be a bow hunter.
Yes,
we're trying.
It's like there should be a contest of rabbit hole, but I guess
come on, we like the rabbit holes.
Remiss if I didn't say a lot of these funky shots that I'm seeing in long range shots are crossbow.
Sure.
A fair segment of that group is not coming from a bow hunting background. They're coming from a gun background, and they're kind of treating their crossbow like a gun as far as angled shots, distance. And again, you can pull it off. Yeah, sometimes it works great. But again, you got a lot of room for things to go wrong.
It's hard to blame those guys when those crossbows are being marketed to them in that
welcome
right?
to your next gun.
Right. I mean, that's literally the marketing campaign, and then we wonder why these things are happening. So yeah, some of it's an educational issue for sure, and it sucks for us to sit on the other side of the camera and having done this for so long, and then have to sit and say, we're our I don't know what you would call them, our comrades, and our people. Are partially responsible for a lot of what's going on out there.
But I think, Justin, you think about this call. I mean, John, you mentioned the guy with the gun. You mentioned the crossbow. I mean, you mentioned us bow hunters. Regardless, I think there's something about when you get that gun in your hand or that crossbow in your hand, it just feels like there's more power, and you just feel like I'm just gonna knock.
Well, there
this
is
thing, right. But that doesn't mean the outcome because you have
doesn't mean you're invincible.
A bigger gun or a crossbow.
Well, I think I see that with the bow hunting community is the heavy arrow single bevel guy. Right. And it's not all of them, because I know a lot of people hear that and they get pissed. Well, I'm that guy and I don't take those shots, and I get it. But I think overwhelmingly the idea of I have this setup that is, bone crunching, can get through any angle and any deer, and I've got XYZ broadhead on there, like I'm now more capable of taking a shot that, previously we wouldn't have taken. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and misconstruing what those setups are capable of. I think those setups should be there to bail you out in the event that you make a poor shot on a highly probable shot that you take. You shouldn't be taking low probability shots because you believe that your arrow is capable at all angles, at all distances, at all situations. And I feel like we're seeing that a little bit more in the archery space of guys being a little overconfident. I do have a question for you. Do you feel like there is an increased amount of people taking what we might consider lower probability shots because of the prevalence of all of the tracking aids now, i.e. dogs and drones? Because there's been some conversation around this idea that, like, okay, if I make a bad shot, I just call the dog and we'll get the deer anyways.
I don't think the propensity for the dog, I really don't think I saw that to any great degree. And I've been doing this for 4 decades. So I don't think I've seen that mentality really manifesting itself to any great degree. You know, have I ever heard that? Sure. But there's limits to it. You still have to get permission to go on property if it doesn't drop on your property. There's still plenty of things that can go wrong, and you're physically in the act of having to trail the deer. Now, drones is a whole nother matter. You're in the air, you can do whatever you want. You can do it for as long as you want. You're basically hunting with the drone, hoping to find your wounded or downed animal. So I think the potential for shot selection to go right out the window if drones become common use, I think it's huge. I think it's almost inevitably going to happen where people are thinking, what do I got to lose? If he's near dead or dead, we'll find him with the drone. If not, I've got him tagged, and I can just keep following for how many days or weeks it takes. And that's not just conjecture. I know of actual cases where that's transpired. So I think the sense of ethics probably will plummet with widespread drone use. That's my opinion. And I've seen some evidence of already with limited drone use. So if it became widespread, I think people will definitely alter how they're shooting at deer.
Yeah. Yuck.
And here's the other thing. Okay, so we're doing it supposedly to prevent wounding loss, which it will in many cases. However, I'm going to say non-fatal wounding will increase, and long-term mortality will increase. Okay, maybe it's a wound that even with the drone you can't find, the next day or 2 or 3 or 4 days, but that weakened animal with that wound is far more likely to expire, over the course of weeks or during the winter or whatever. So I think long-term mortality will go up. I think non-fatal wounding will also go up.
Well, we got to figure out how we're going to get our non-typical deer somehow. No,
yeah, I think the question is, like, how do you combat? Like, I don't know. There's so many. It's kind of like putting the toothpaste back in the tube analogy, right? And that's applied to a lot of things in modern life. It's like, how do you stop this from happening? And I still kind of always go back to, education, right? It's just education. And I think it's hunters starting to a certain degree, hold each other more accountable. We see a lot of things on videos that are put out there where it's just like nobody's holding anybody accountable for their decisions anymore. The only thing they care about is the outcome, the grip and grin, I killed my XYZ biggest whatever buck, and all of the rest of the story leading up to that seems to be lost.
Yeah, I just think about, I don't know, we've been doing this so long together, and there's something about that bow hunting. Listen, I started off as a rifle hunter, and you know what? It was kind of a brown is down. You saw it. You had the gun that was capable to be able to reach out there and do it. But it was the advancing to being a bow hunter was like the top of the pyramid. It was the being able to get close to that deer that you were chasing, and man, the closer you could pull it off, the better. Like, I just felt like for me in my life,
accomplishment.
Yeah, it was like the accomplishment was like, oh my gosh, Justin, I had this thing in at 10 yards, and I was creeping around to get the shot. I mean, like that is like the skill. Like, isn't that the part? Like, that's the part that gets my skin on my back, just like excited about being in a tree stand, bow hunting in a saddle, whatever. Like that closeness. Like, isn't that why we do this?
For a lot of people, it's not anymore. The reason they do it is to get social media clout and likes and fill their walls with big deer that they can post photos of. I mean,
where are you looking, Justin?
I don't know. I'm just our empty wall over here. I don't know. It's interesting out there.
Yeah, and I think that's what we got to get back to is the emphasis on the hunting and not the killing.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're talking about the old days and bow hunting being the pinnacle, it was because it was actual true hunting, and it was about getting close and the killing. You hope to do it eventually, but it wasn't a given. It was about the hunting, and I think that's what we got to try to maintain or get back to. Yeah. No matter what the weapon, actually. I mean,
100% agree.
Whatever it is, you should be taking ethical, high percentage shots.
So, always.
When we were at the ATA show this year, we did a little video where we were asking people, how far do you think you should shoot at a white-tailed deer with archery equipment? And we interviewed a bunch of, celebrities, social media influencers and people. And, the thing that stood out to me the most from that one, because this is something I've heard time and time again through the years, is we interviewed a young man. I think he's 12, our friend, little Bo. And, his first question when I said, hey, how far should you shoot at a whitetail with your bow? He said, well, how big is the buck? And, I've just heard that so often, and not just with a bow, but with a crossbow, with a gun. It seems like the bigger the animal, the more risk people are willing to take to get that animal.
Yep.
That they're just willing to air it out even further. And my philosophy on that has always been the exact opposite. That's the animal I don't want to risk losing. I don't want to risk making a bad shot. There ain't a lot of them out there. I'm not going to get a lot of these opportunities. And I don't know, maybe for some folks, like you have to live through the heartache of losing a big animal before you realize that it's not worth it. But that's just a very common thing I've always heard. And I can imagine how it affects a lot of the folks that you have to eventually track for when, they've set a limit of 30 or 40 yards, and all of a sudden there's one standing at 50 or 60 that's the biggest deer they've ever seen, and they decide, hey, I am going to air this thing out, and the next thing you know, John, are you there? Can you come out here and help me?
Well, and it's, to be fair, certainly the majority of tracks I'm on isn't that scenario. It's something's gone wrong despite the person's best efforts,
sure.
Whether it was whatever the animal did, or they just simply made a bad shot, or things happen, or weather conditions or something or other. For whatever reason, it's the deer isn't bleeding externally. So I don't want to paint that most of the tracks I go
sure.
on is because people are making poor decisions.
But I'm sure there's got to be a not inconsequential percentage of folks that are making, because there's poor decisions not just in shot distance, right, but in angle, in
sure.
the animals in the brush, the animals moving, the whatever. Like I still think
you all hyped up and ready to bolt, or
sure.
relaxed.
Yeah,
and you hear those. I mean, whether you say stuff or not, you're a professional, John. I've been around you enough to know that. But and whether it's me being around people or hearing stories or meeting people, like you hear it. I don't care. We're at a trade show, and it's just like you hear people talk, and it's just like, oh man, it was about ready to get away, and I had to take the crossbow, and I had to go underneath it.
Well, and I just wonder, if you're in the situation where there's no video, nobody knows what happened except you. Right? I mean, how likely are you to fudge that story just a little bit, right? To make it not, like, it's hard to tell all your buddies or tell a tracker that, this deer was at this angle or he was doing the, you're probably going to paint that picture a little bit rosier for yourself,
of course,
than maybe what the reality truly is.
Well, I would say that I'm probably hearing the reality, or the reality is the best that the hunter can express it to me. He may be wrong with what actually happened, but I don't think I'm hearing too many people sugarcoat what they did, because they want to be honest and they want to give me the best information so I can make the best decision as to how to proceed.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm hearing too many sugar-coated stories. I think I'm seeing or hearing.
John's a good guy. He's giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I'm for the most part dealing with really nice people.
Sure.
Trying to do their best, and I'm trying to do my best for them.
What do you think the most common, mistake we make as bow hunters is? And I don't mean just after the shot, but like during the shot, shooting an animal. Like, what's something that you kind of just hear time and time again, where for the people that watch or listen to this, they could take away something to focus on when they're in the heat of the moment shooting an animal? Like, what's the most common thing that you just hear over and over again?
Good question.
That is a good question. I don't know. I think maybe going back to the deer that's really wired up and he's ready to bolt and he's not relaxed, and I think that has a tremendous role in how things go with the shot. Other than that, I'm not really sure that I.
That's a good one, though. That's a good one, though, because I think it was, gosh, it might have been Fred Eichler when we asked him. I think that was, his response on like how far are you shooting an animal, and a lot of it was very predicated on that animal's, mental state at the time, right? Which is definitely a huge thing. I mean, I've definitely passed shots at deer that were within my bow range where I was like, there's no way I can get a shot off at this deer without it. Oh, yeah.
Like, staring at
this is going to be a bad outcome. And I think, again, it's so hard and unfortunate that you have to learn life's lessons, not just with deer hunting, but probably in everything.
Yeah.
That we all have to learn those lessons the hard way before we start changing our behaviors. And I think there's been enough animals that I've shot, personally, and not recovered or had a hard time recovering to get to the point where I'm at right now, where I can say to myself, like, this isn't worth it. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. If I don't make the right shot, like, I don't want to deal with that again. And I think for a lot of folks, like, it's a hard thing to learn. And if you don't learn it firsthand, like, you can go on a million wild goose chases with your buddies on deer that they shot and not learn a damn thing from any of them, until you do it yourself and you're the guy on the other end going, shoot, probably shouldn't have done that.
Yep. Yeah, good point.
And it even comes down to what the weather conditions are. Is it breezy?
Totally.
So it's going to affect your arrow flight, or you're in the tree and it's moving around, or is it about the downpour and you got to try to track without any visible blood sign? I mean, you probably ought to be changing what shots you will take based on a number of variables.
Sure.
It's not a blanket of I can shoot this far, or it depends on the scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like, that's been our rule, is when we're, a couple hours from home and it's a Sunday night. Like, number one, we ain't shooting does. Number two, if we're shooting something, you better damn well make sure you kill it quick, because we all got to be at work tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, well, it comes down to the matter of ethics and fair chase, and that's why I think the emphasis needs to go back onto hunting and what are we really trying to get out of this pursuit. It's more than a dead animal, or it shouldn't be just focused on the dead animal. And if you are focusing on the total experience and the hunting aspect of it, it's not so bad not to come home with an animal.
Right.
That's the bonus if that happens. So if that's your mentality, it's a lot easier to pass up the risky shot or the iffy shot and just really wait for that perfect high percentage shot.
Yeah.
If it's all about, I got to be posing with something dead, well, then, ethics gets watered down, and I think we're in a bad place.
All right, here we go.
Definitely.
You're not allowed to think, just answer.
Uh-oh.
Mechanical or fixed?
Haven't we been through this before?
Yeah, this is a new
We
year.
have.
Yeah,
Maybe
I've
John's
changed
changed.
my opinion.
It's not going to change.
What
Go.
is it?
It's not going to change.
And it is
Same
drum roll.
response as before. Show me where you're going to hit the deer, and I'll tell you what broadhead to use.
Todd just wanted to click his little applause button. He knew what was coming. He knew what was coming there.
I mean,
So when we talk mechanical fixed blade, right? A lot of what we talk about in the proponents for fixed blade broadheads talk about penetration specifically, right? That is the determining factor of a mechanical versus a fixed blade. It's going to penetrate better. You're going to get multiple holes. It's going to break through bone. It's going to do all these things. The amount of shots that you go on, deer recovered or not recovered, how many of those do you feel like are influenced by the amount of penetration that the arrow gets? Let's say excluding a shoulder shot, because I think shoulder shots is probably the one that, okay, yeah, if we can break through and get through, there's a good chance. But every other shot outside of a shoulder shot, like how often do you feel like penetration is a determining factor in the recovery of that animal?
well, my results might be a little skewed based on the fact that I'm trailing with the dog. So in the absence of visible blood, which you're going to get less of probably with one entry hole rather than an entry and an exit. So I, even in the absence of blood or visible, might be able to recover that deer that without the dog, you may not. So
I mean, I think we can universally agree 2 holes is better than 1, you know.
yeah, I definitely,
when it comes to shooting a deer.
Definitely want to exit hole if at all possible. And for the most part, we're talking about hunting whitetail deer.
Sure.
Yes.
Now, I'm dealing with some huge deer, and you guys are too. That's a little different than a regular whitetail deer in a lot of places in the country. But by and large, unless you're talking about kids or, smaller statured women or something, the penetration really isn't that big of a deal, unless you're getting into quartering shots or something where you've got a longer distance to go through. But if you're talking about broadside shots and, you're a man shooting a compound bow with the energies that these things are spitting out now, I don't know that penetration really should be that huge of a factor.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I've always said. Like a deer's only a foot wide or whatever.
Unless you're
even a
talking
big one.
bone.
Unless we're talking bone, but sure.
Ordering shots, and you're going to be hitting heavy bone.
Yeah.
Stay away from
that
them.
is different.
Fair enough.
Don't do them.
Don't.
Well, I think even with the heavy arrow and the single bevel and all that, I think there's risk with the quartering shots, front quartering shots.
Yeah.
I would agree with
that. Are
that.
they more capable than some other arrows? Probably so, but there's still problems that can develop.
Yeah. I know you talked a little bit about like your rules for weighting. Wait times for you by type of shot. General guidelines for people to follow.
Keep it here. We'll read off the shot. You say the time.
Okay.
Okay. You
gut
go
shot.
first. Go.
I don't like to go for gut shots before like 15 hours unless there's something, some other factor that comes in, like it's going to be downpouring rain. Maybe I'll bump it up a little bit. But 15, even stretching out to 24, if it's way back and it's intestinal, low intestinal, might even stretch it longer than that. But I think a lot of people, could it be dead in, 45 minutes or 2 hours or whatever? Again, it goes back to what got cut other than just intestines or stomach.
Liver shot.
Even with the liver, I usually would like to wait 6 to 9 hours. And depending on what you see, if you see some pressurized blood gushing out, well, that might tell you to go sooner. But I've seen liver shots that lasted well beyond that point. So I'm usually pretty conservative,
Pointing at me?
wanting to wait
Well, you're up
longer
next.
than sooner.
Got it. How about a shot that's in front of the shoulder?
Okay, when we're talking those kind of hits where you're probably dealing or hoping to be dealing with artery hits, or low heart type shots, that I might jump on sooner, depending again on other factors like property lines. If you've got property issues, well, I don't care what the shot is, you better wait if there's the possibility that you can't go on that next property
Sure.
or the next property after that. We did a trail. It was a lung shot deer. Oh, was it 2 years ago? I think that ended up being like 2 miles, and I think we were on 5 properties by the time it was all said and done.
Is this like a single lung type shot?
You know, I had to get going. I didn't stick around for the
Autopsy?
the gutting, the autopsy, necropsy. But it was a pass through. So whether it was 1 or 2 lungs, I'm not sure. But it went two miles, and we had to finish it. We jumped it a couple times and then had to finish it at the end.
Got it.
So you just
Assuming property lines are not an issue, what is a shot, if there is one, where you would recommend getting on it right away?
Oh yeah, you were talking about the frontal type shots, and so those we're talking about an artery that's going to do the job. Then going sooner can actually be of benefit if you can stay on the trail.
Sure.
And
would those be the situations, because you've heard people talk about, like, you got to keep them moving, you got to get them up, you got to keep them bleeding. If they lay down and they clot and lick at it or do whatever, like, the chances are you're gonna, lose them or whatever. Is that a real thing that people should keep in mind?
Yeah, that is a strategy. Can it backfire on you? Yes, but it is a strategy, and one that we have used before. If that is the type of hits that you might follow that strategy on, it's the hit that's the arterial bleeding, the thing where if that tapers off, it's not doing the job. So yeah, keeping a leg hit moving and hopefully bleeding can be a good strategy. Now, so I'll tell you about a trail. It was a giant deer, a 217-inch deer. And once again, it was some existing clients that basically said, we're after this deer. We hit it. If it doesn't drop, we're calling you in. Well, that was on video. It looked like a heart shot. And they, true to their word, didn't drop. It ran out of the food plot and into the hardwoods. And they called me, and I showed up that night. And they were hot to trot. I was trying to hold them back a little bit, watching the video, and it looked a little bit low to me. But it did look like it should be in there in the money, a heart type shot. Well, we got on it, and they said, well, that's going to be right inside the wood line, but we said we'd call you, and so go run it. Well, it wasn't right in the wood line, and we're going and going, and then this blood starts getting sparse, and we'd have a little bit. Well, we go and go and go, and ends up we went 2 miles on that deer. Now, at one point or a couple of points, there was fairly good bleeding. We actually came to a bed that had quite a lot of blood in it, looked encouraging, but thereafter the bleeding tapered off and it went down to nothing. And at that 2 mile mark, I finally said, well, I think we need to get this deer more time, and we were facing a property issue. So we did actually did come back in to recover the deer later. But that was a deer as it turns out, was not hard shot. It just barely went through the bottom of the brisket and actually hit the offside leg, high in the leg, and it was artery hit in that opposite leg that actually ended up killing the deer. So the fact that we did get on them, and then I don't think for the most part we were pushing them. Probably towards the end of the trail, maybe we had pushed them out of that bed. It was sprinkling a little bit. It was hard to tell. So it may have helped the cause to actually stay on that deer and go. But at the end, I made the decision that I thought it was best that, okay, now it's finally time to pull out of here, and we'll come back at a later time. I think we've done what we can, and don't want to risk the another property line, and that proved out to be a good choice. But,
okay. All right. Last question. What is the craziest shot you've ever seen that resulted in a recovered animal? Like the most improbable, like I cannot believe this thing died from this shot.
I've recovered a couple that were hit a couple inches above the hoof.
Wild. The old hoof shot, Todd. So that's just got to be probably an artery again, right? That's feeding down the bottom of the leg, and they eventually just bleed out. Huh?
That has never happened to me. I mean, I don't feel like ever.
I've heard of that in Dustin's told me a few of those out in Wyoming on antelope, because I remember going out antelope hunting one year, and it was opening week of the season, and there was probably a dozen guys in camp.
Oh, no.
I was the only guy that did not kill an antelope that week, and I hit the blind and missed one, and then I basically bounced one off the bottom of the brisket of one. Like it, I think the fletching slapped, right? And I'm thinking, man, I was 6 inches low of killing that thing. There was other guys in camp that had shot one like in the hoof, in the back hoof, and killed it and recovered it. And I'm like, that dude's arrow was 4 feet away from where it should have been, and he killed it. And mine was 6 inches low, and I came home with nothing. I remember just being like, this bow hunting thing is crazy. Like, it's just so crazy.
Well, that's a little different. That's antelope. I've never tracked antelope, but I suppose, you hit an antelope, you can probably watch it go for a half a mile or 3/4.
That is the one nice thing. There's nowhere to hide.
No. Kind of a different scenario.
Yes,
there.
For sure.
But I've almost recovered deer hit almost in any part of the body. Sometimes you just end up hitting the right thing, and it's like, how the heck did this deer die? But it just hit the right thing.
And then others live when they're very similar shots. It's crazy how just that
similar shots, almost
bit.
Perfect shots. I've literally tracked deer, and for a fact that know that they lived, that were heart shot and double lung shot.
Yeah.
Now, obviously not through the center of the heart, but touched.
Sure.
But definitely through two lungs, and they lived.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it was Joel Maxfield a couple years ago posted a whole series of pictures and whatnot from a deer that his wife had shot. That was a double lung that was never recovered, and then she ended up killing it later, and they were able to show like the holes in the deer, in the lungs, like everything. Like, here's the proof. This isn't just conjecture, like, because you've heard plenty of those stories where guys are like, I smoked them, and I didn't recover them, so my broadhead must not have opened or whatever. Like, this wasn't that case. This was like, here is every piece of evidence all the way until the deer was dead,
right, to
show you that it was shot through the lungs and did not die the first time. So it can happen.
It can happen. It does happen. I basically don't count on anything. I've just seen too much weird stuff. And in fact, that same year, that somebody had sent me that posting that you're talking about, Justin. And that same year, now they had made a comment that I guess that was shot with a fixed blade. And they thought, well, if we'd used the big expandable, it would have been a dead deer within 150 yards.
Who knows?
Well, that same year that they did that, I had a client shoot almost the identical shot with a large expandable. Difference being the posting showed that the arrow had actually exited and they had an exit hole. My client's arrow only went to the far shoulder, and that's where it stopped, and then it pulled back out. Well, that deer was shot, I don't know, a week later, week and a half later during gun season.
Yeah.
And that's a big expandable going through the lungs.
Yeah. Wild.
Well, wrapping this up, I think one thing's we can
Poison
all
tipped
agree on.
arrows, Todd. We can all agree. Poison tipped arrows are the way to go.
You mean with some of that, like that dart frog stuff? I've heard. Is it the dart frog
I
that
don't
they're
know
using?
what that is. Can I just use a drone with a poison tipped arrow?
Well, I think what they're the poison dart frog. I think it killed somebody in jail recently. You didn't see that post? No. Okay, we'll leave that alone. Neither one of you guys saw this.
I don't know. Who did it kill? Epstein?
It-
Is that how he was killed, Todd?
No,
With
it
a
was-
poison
I
dart?
didn't see it, but I'm familiar with those frogs.
It was. I think it was somebody in a Russian jail, but we'll leave all that alone. Regardless,
Google it.
Google it. You'll find it. It's real. I just want to end because we are bow hunt or die, and you know what? I want to die with a bow in my hand. And when it comes right down to it, like I think all of us and anyone that's made it this far in the podcast just needs to remember and just think about why we bow hunt and why we do what we do. And it's about the encounters. It's about getting up and close and outsmarting that whitetail. And it's not always about filling that tag. It's about those experiences.
It's not how far you can shoot. It's how close you can get to them. Everyone should remember that.
Yeah.
We're trying to put Tracker John out of work here.
Well, that's probably never going to happen. But,
What he should have said is never going to happen with you two idiots.
but it should be about the hunting and going back to how I started this, the fact that I had a successful season based on that we were all healthy and the dogs stayed healthy, didn't get hurt. It should be that way too with our own hunting. If you're healthy and can be out there in the great outdoors, you got a place to hunt, and you're enjoying the outdoor experience, you're successful. You don't have to have
You're
a dead
right.
animal to make it a success. And enjoy what the experience is, and
That's right. So when I don't kill a buck for the next couple years, Todd, you just remember that.
That could happen to either one of us. All
Call
right.
me up, I'll
I
give you a
think
pep talk.
historically speaking, Todd, the odds are probably in your favor here. Just if we go by a pattern of history over the last 2 decades.
Listen, don't put. I don't want the extra pressure, so I'm
you
diverting
need it.
all that
You
off.
need the pressure.
No, I
It's
don't
good
want
for
no
you.
pressure. Less pressure the older we get. John, listen, as always, we appreciate you jumping on with us. I think the stories are great. The lessons learned are always great. And you know what? I love seeing you every year. I love seeing the dogs. I just love seeing the whole process. I think it's cool. You know what? The thermal drone thing, as we talked just briefly about, I hope Illinois continues to hold the line on not allowing the drones. Personally, that's just my personal feelings. Your personal feelings on that?
I would like them to be legal.
Whoa. Okay. Well,
Sorry, John.
Whoa.
Well, okay, since I was
Trying to wrap this up, but
Hey, you asked me.
you just opened her back up again.
Yeah.
I
This blood
think
trail's
there's a
never
lot of
ending.
Negatives with the drones that people aren't considering. I already discussed how I think it's going to alter what's an acceptable shot and what guys are doing with it.
I agree.
The thing about allowing it for game recovery, which on the surface sounds like a good idea. Who doesn't want to see as much recovered as possible? But again, I think it's going to open up greater amounts of wounding because of the lack of shot selection. Long-term mortality, I think, will increase. There is no way to enforce drone use only for game recovery. If you've allowed it for game recovery, and I've had DNR people tell me this, you can't prevent the other stuff from happening. If you allow game recovery, you've basically allowed everything. There's no way to prevent it. There's no way to enforce it. And I'm already hearing stories about people using it to shoot big bucks and walking a guy with a crossbow in with earbuds and using the drone to direct him to where the big buck is. And I think we're handing the anti-hunters one of the biggest talking points they possibly could have. When the general public, the non-hunting public, hears how hunters in their goal for maximum killing are using artificial intelligence and high technology without concern for fair chase, I think you're going to turn a lot of non-hunters into anti-hunters. And I think in the long run, it's going to be a very bad deal for hunting. It's probably a small step from, okay, we're going to use whatever technological means necessary to recover that deer because we don't want wounding. If that's, and who cares about the other problems that creates? If that's your argument, it's not a big leap then for the non-hunting public to go, well, let's just bring in sharpshooters with thermals and bait piles at night, and we'll get rid of the deer that way. We won't have to deal with hunters. There will be no loss, no wounding. Be careful what you wish for here.
Yeah, Justin.
I mean, I think you could go round and round about that subject.
Well, let's save that for another podcast with John.
Yeah, my only thing would be, I think in order for that to get to that point where it's truly like an anti-hunter talking point, you'd have to have massive public adoption of this by hunters, i.e. like right
Which
now. But I don't think it would, because I think hunters are fairly proficient at policing our own, right? So I don't think the general hunting public would be okay with hunters using drones to target specific animals and go hunting, because that's going to continue to be illegal, which is going to continue to be poaching. So yes, the anti-hunters could come through and say, hey, guys are using this technology to poach, but the hunting community at large is going to be very, very adamantly against doing that. They're going to want those people caught. They're going to want them prosecuted. They're going to do their best to try to police this as well as it can be. So I don't think it's as big of an issue with anti-hunters.
But it's unenforceable. It's unenforceable.
Guess what? Unfortunately, almost everything is unenforceable now. There's one DNR agent for multiple counties trying to police fishing, hunting, deer hunting, waterfowl, upland, trapping. Like, I tell you what, there's a lot of violations going on out there they're unenforced today,
but this technology is taking it to a whole nother level.
Maybe.
And whenever you consider legalizing something, what you're legalizing is not what you're going to have in the probably not too distant future. If you look at what compound bows were, what crossbows were, muzzleloader, there's a great example.
Sure.
What was a muzzleloader when that was legalized for maximum recreation with a little impact on the resource? It was a 75-yard gun. Now as soon as you legalize something, you've incentivized
industry around
the industry to increase, to bring the prices down while maximizing the benefits. So that 75-yard muzzleloader is now a 500-yard gun. And so what you've got with the drones now, as the prices come down, they will be widely adapted, and most guys will have one. And all you have to do is look at what the military is doing with drones to see what the future is. What the drone legalized today is, and the drone use will be a fraction of the adaptation in the future and what that drone is capable of in the future. So you're opening a can of worms.
Pandora's box, they say. The kids would say we're cooked. That's what they would say.
We're cooked.
We're cooked.
All right, guys. The name of this episode is We're Cooked. That's as simple as that. You have to wait till the end to understand what we're talking about, but we're cooked. Well, John, as always, I am going to officially end this podcast. Thank you for everything. I unfortunately have to run to the veterinarian now because my dog blew its freaking other ACL out and is now going to need another $3,000 or $4,000 surgery, which I cannot wait
Yay.
for. So
3 or 4 seems low.
I'm glad
for an
that
ACL in 2026.
Dude, don't say that.
I'm just telling you, dude. I'm just telling you. That seems low.
Regardless.
Good luck with that. Hopefully it's successful and your dog has lots of good years ahead.
Fingers crossed. John,
Thanks,
thank
John.
you for everything. We appreciate it, and we'll be in touch soon.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.